seats there in the middle, it looks like. Okay, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
You can hear me okay? It's wonderful to be back here. My name is Al Stetner. I'm the nephew of Alfred Warm, whose name is here on the memorial. He was my uncle. It's wonderful to see everybody after our hiatus last year. We've been coming up here every year since 1996. And we missed last year. It was our first time we missed it, but it's wonderful to be back here, and it's wonderful to see how many people have come up, and it's wonderful to see how beautiful this memorial looks after 25 years. I would like to make a special welcome to family members of the men on the memorial who are here today. We have Arthur Miller's niece, Sue Miller. We have Henry Labreck's niece, Joan Bartholomew. We have Henry Gillis's family here, his daughter and son, Helen Swan and Ralph McFadden. His grandchildren, Brian Miller and Amy Bartley. And his earnest great-granddaughter, Crystal Bartley. And we have members of Al Warm's family here too. His nephews, Ellen Scott and myself, and Jesse, his great-nephew, and Naomi, his great-great-nephew. And there's Naomi, a year and a half years old, and she's hiked up the mountain here twice in her year and a half. God bless her. So before Bob Pillane starts the program off, I just want to say we'll be interrupted in a little while. We have some F-15C Eagles flying from the 104th Fighter Wing based at Barnes Air National Guard Base close by. They'll do a flyover at 10:15, so when we see them coming, I'll interrupt whoever's talking, except Bob. I never interrupt Bob. They're in the air, so we may hear them. These are F-15s. We may hear them after we see them, after we see them. I don't think Bob here needs an introduction. I think everybody in the Pioneer Valley must know Bob Pillane. He established and led the Mount Tom B-17 Memorial Committee. So he's responsible for creating the site, and he's responsible for us being here every year since 1996. My mother, she used to say that in 1946, she lost her brother at this site, and in 1996, she gained a family at this site. So here is my honorary brother, Bob Pillane.
Thank you. Needless to say, it's great to be here. And Congressman, we have a seat right up front here for you if you'd like to join us. As the late Bobby Kennedy, one of his quotes was, "Some ask why, and some say why not." And I think that kind of sums it up of the committee that's stuck it out and worked to make this happen. 25 years later, and thank God most of us are still here to remember how this all started. And also thank God for the men and women who have joined our committee in our quest not to forget these men who served our country. And Norm Cody, who would not stop bugging me to make something happen. Harking back to the day we broke ground in the committee, and special guests Jack and Dot Stetner, who told us a story how much she hated this mountain as she traveled back and forth from New Hampshire because of the loss of her brother. The melted fuselage parts sat on my desk in Northampton Veterans Service and prodded me to keep pushing to make the memorial happen. And my staffs, Sabrina Flagg, Chad Peruge, Jason Hart, Candace Christian, John Labreck, and my friend and fellow sailor, who's been with me at the site many times, Paul Lipinski. I cannot thank you enough for all your support. My two co-chairs, John Guerin of Holyoke Veteran Service and John Parsons of East Hampton Veteran Service, for their help and guidance during those many meetings at the Memorial Building in Holyoke. As the years have passed, we can't stop to thank Brian and Violet Farrell for all their upkeep and care for the memorial for the last 25 years. But last but not least, Jesus Perra, our current chairman of the Holyoke Veteran Services, who has carried the torch to keep these men recognized and will not be forgotten. Thank you for the best committee I could have asked for to make this memorial happen. Sincerely, Bob Bailey.
Please rise for the presentation of colors by the Westover Civil Air Patrol Honor Guard, and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance and the singing of the National Anthem by Alfred Warm's niece, Cantor Ellen Stetner.
Right, face. Freeze that. Arms.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
March.
You may be seated. From the gates of prayer, the young soldiers do not speak. Nevertheless, they are heard in the still houses. Who has not heard them? They have a silence that speaks for them at night and when the clock counts. They say, we are young, we have died, but remember us. They say, we have done what we could, but until it is finished, it is not done. They say, we have given our lives, but until it is finished, no one can know what our lives gave. They say, our deaths are not ours. They are yours. They will mean what you make them. They say, whether our lives and our deaths are for peace and a new hope, or for nothing, we cannot say. It is you who must say this. We say, we leave you our deaths. Give them their meaning. We were young, they say. We have died. Remember us. O eternal our God, as we remember them with very great love, we ask that you bestow your blessings upon the families of the brave young men who were on their way home 75 years ago. We ask that you bestow your blessings upon the generous men and women of the B-17 committee, whose loving kindness has embraced us all for more than 25 years, since the original dedication. We ask that you bestow your blessings on the many friends who support us as they stand with us on this sacred ground on this day and during the previous 24 gatherings. We ask that you bestow your blessings on the precious memories of those who stood with us here and embraced us here, but whose physical presence is no more. We ask that you bestow your blessings upon all our leaders, and please God, upon all the peoples of the earth. And together let us say, Amen.
Amen.
It's a great honor to have leaders from the federal, state, and local level here today. We have Congressman Richard Neal, who represents the 1st Congressional District, State Senator John Bellis, who represents the 2nd Hampton and Hampshire District, State Representative Patricia Duffy, who represents the 5th Hampton District, and Mayor Terry Murphy of Holyoke. We sincerely appreciate you being up here today. You're honoring our 25, and you're honoring all of us for being here. We also greatly appreciate your support for the memorial, especially in regard to it gaining official designation and resources to support its perpetual care. I'd like to invite each of you to give a few remarks, starting with the mayor, followed by Representative Duffy, Senator Bellis, and finally Congressman Neal. And I hate to say this, I may interrupt you if the F-15s fly over. Forgive me. Mayor Murphy, over to you.
I do see them flying over when I walk at the college many a day. They have interrupted our walk, but we just look up. So, first of all, on behalf of the city of Holyoke, I want to welcome you all to this memorial monument, to the families that have traveled. We owe you our gratitude. We offer our sympathies. You have all positive things to be proud of. These men gave their ultimate sacrifice. And I also want to thank all of our veterans, both in service now and those who have served in the past, for all that you've done, for the sacrifices that you made, and for the causes that you fought for and believe in. And may we always try to remember, our goal is to be strong, but never have to use that strength. We want to have peace. We want to be strong in peace. We want to be ready, and when necessary, be able to do it and be able to handle it. And these families did it. They did it in the worst of circumstances. They survived the war and ended up coming back and unfortunately having this accident as they came home. You have every reason to be proud. And I want to thank everyone here. There they are. Obviously, I need to know this is time, so I want to pass it on to Reverend. Again, I want to thank the families for coming. I want to thank all of you for honoring these fallen victims, and thank you for your service. Pat.
Thank you, Mayor, for speaking long enough so that you were the one who was interrupted. Really, when this is maybe my second or third time here, and I am always just awestruck. So thank you to the committee that made this memorial happen, and huge thank you to the families. You've shared your loss, your family members. You've imbued it with the meaning of believing in something bigger than yourself, working for your community, working for your country. So this this accident, has become something that's imbued with a meaning that's bigger than all of us. And it's because of your generosity, this family, and this committee, and all the veterans who've done the work to support this important memorial. And so we, in government, are gonna do what we need to do to make sure that this has the protection it needs over the years. To my colleague, Senator Gillis.
Thank you, Rep. What an honor to be here. Not to bring a little bit of levity to this situation, but when I was down at the bottom on multiple occasions, people said, "Do you want a ride to the top on the van?" And I said, "No, I'm in the Army." And then I got about halfway up and I said, why can I never just be quiet? I'll learn one of these days. You know, what to me, what is the most painful, I guess is the only word that I can think of, being up here and honoring this and remembering this event, is right there. They were on their way home. You know, if you look at, for those of us who have put the uniform on, and even not, when you're on your way home, in many respects, that's when you let your guard down. You're happy, you're thinking of your family, you're thinking of your loved ones, you're thinking of all the things that probably went on back in the civilian world, stateside, when you weren't here. And that's when this happened. But those who volunteered, those who were on this mission, those who so valiantly served their country in World War II and every subsequent conflict, what I say to all of you is that everything on a daily basis that we take for granted is because of nothing else but the willingness of young men and women to raise their hand and take that oath to defend this nation. As long as we have young men and women who are willing to do that, we will be okay as a nation. It's an absolute honor to be here. To the families, it's an absolute honor to be here. Thank you for the service of your loved ones. We are honored to be in your presence. Now, to my dear friend, Congressman Neal.
Thank you. What a great crowd this is, to be representative of the advocacy that has made sure that this day is recalled. And what sets us apart in the family of species has always been the idea that, unlike the lower parts of the animal kingdom, we have a memory. And we also acknowledge today the great work of Bob Callahan and his continued support and advocacy, our veterans who have so faithfully assembled here today to recall as to what happened to their brothers on this date all of those years ago. And I want to acknowledge as well Cynthia Simison from the Springfield Republican, the editor, because she has kept veterans issues, and let's be candid, the editor and the publisher of a paper, the editorial page belongs to them. They decide what's covered, they decide what's written, and she has chosen Sunday after Sunday for all of these years to remind all of us as to the sacrifice of those before us. So it's with this sense of gratitude to be with the mayor and Representative Duffy and Senator Gillis, and to all of you. Also the grim reminder that there is this tendency for all of us to turn on evening news, perhaps, for those of us who still do, and say, well, Washington must be the center of our lives. Or to pick up a morning headline, which some of us still do, and say, well, no, Boston must be the center of our lives, when the compelling evidence is that in places like this, with people like you, with families and friends and churches and synagogues, this is the center of our lives, because it's called community. And in community, we all recall that these sacrifices were very real. The poet reminds us that time is famous for its irony. Very simple statement. But think of the irony of these men returning after having participated in one of the great success stories in the history of the world, the triumph of World War II. Against the banality of the evil of Nazi occupation, the marching forces of Japan, and the Axis industries. And they triumphed, only to lose their lives in a peaceful return mission home. So the story's really never over. And it's certainly not over for the families that recall those spectacular achievements of lives that had never been lived out. So on occasions like this, I was thinking that I was here for the 50th anniversary. I was one of the speakers. And Bob, even though I'm against term limits, I can't guarantee that I'll be here for the 100th. But when I see all of you today in moments like this, congratulations from the United States of America.
Thank you so much. Very touching words. Very touching. Appreciate it. One talent they have that I don't, they all spoke without notes. I need my notes. If they get blurred in the rain, I'll try to tap dance. Again, it's wonderful to be back on this double anniversary as we pay tribute to two significant milestones, the 75th anniversary of the accident and 25 years since the dedication of this memorial. It's a beautiful memorial. The site tells two stories. One is the young lives tragically lost after honorably serving their country. And the other is of the caring and love of strangers who conceived and built this memorial and reached out.
We provide service. Right, Mr. Mayor.
That's right. Again, two stories, the men who lost their lives here and the volunteers who saw a need and created this monument and created this ceremony that we come to every year. And notified family members, finally notified family members that their loved ones were not forgotten. So we have the front side of the stone that has the names of our heroes that we lost, and we have the back side of the stone of the names of the heroes who turned a place of tragedy into a place of love. My family's first visit here was in early 1996, before any construction started on the site. It was pretty amazing. There was still wreckage on the ground. There was still even burn marks on the ground. We had mixed emotions about coming. This site represented a place of great family loss, my mother's brother. And when we got here at the site, frankly, it reinforced the hesitation that we had about coming. Again, the wreckage, burn marks on the ground. And the thing that struck us most, and actually brought my mother to tears, was the view. You can't see it now because of the foliage, but the view of the runway at Westover, to see how close they came to making it home safely. But in 1996, this site was transformed, and for the past 25 years, my family and I look forward to coming here every year to honor and pay homage to our departed heroes. On behalf of all of the family members of the 25, and I speak for all of us, I'd like to express our deepest and sincerest appreciation to the Mount Tom B-17 Memorial Committee, past and present, and the many volunteers who continue to maintain the site, organize this annual ceremony, and honor these men. God bless you all. As become our tradition, I'd like to say a few words about the 25 men who are returning home from their service in Greenland. Even though the accident occurred over a year after World War II ended, each one of the 25 had entered their respective services while the war was still going on. Some enlisted on their 18th birthday as soon as they were legally eligible, and some even when they were still 17, which they were allowed to do if they had their parents' consent. So first of all, why were they in Greenland? Of all places, Greenland. So Greenland did play a significant role at the end of World War II, throughout World War II, and immediately after the war as well. The U.S. Coast Guard operated long-range radio navigation stations called Loran stations and weather stations to enable the thousands of people and material to come across the Atlantic unfettered. Greenland also served as the base for the famous Greenland Patrol, which the Coast Guard ran what they called cutters, ships that protected the Navy from threats ranging from German U-boats to icebergs. And Greenland also served as a critical transit point for military aircraft heading to Europe. Once the war ended in 1945, these navigation stations and the airfields continued to support the United States relief effort to the war-torn continent and to its people. So our 25 guys were serving a very important mission. They helped win the war in Europe, and they helped rebuild Europe after the war. About half of our men, I'll tell you, the lucky ones are sitting under the tent. But it's okay, we're all tough. In fact, how many veterans do we have here? Just raise your hand if you're a veteran. God bless you all. And the veterans can stand the rain. I'm the wimp who has to be in the line. So about half the men served together at the navigation station, Lorand Station, outside the Eskimo village of Frederiksdal in southern Greenland. Ernie Gillis, Arthur Miller, Alfred Warm, Russell Scott, Lee Winard, Arnold Simons, Greg Davenport, David Archlies, Stanley Warthog, George Orford, and George Benfield. They all served together, and they were a close-knit and fun group based on the pictures that my Uncle Al sent home. The other Coast Guardsmen who were on the plane likely served on a Coast Guard cutter, a Coast Guard ship, as part of the famous Greenland Patrol. The main Army airfield in southern Greenland was codenamed BW-1, Louis West 1, known by its Eskimo name as Narsarsuaq. About 10,000 aircraft landed at Narsarsuaq on the way to the war in Europe. Wilfred Johnson, Hugh Wirth, George Fleming, and Frank Merriam served on a Coast Guard cutter, and Henry Labreck, Rex Pansy, Howard Carson, and Logio Sanchez likely supported the air operations at Narsarsuaq. In addition, we had 2 civilians on the plane. Since the Coast Guard was not staffed by Coast Guard doctors or Navy doctors, Dr. Pasquale Caviello of the U.S. Public Health Service fulfilled that role. The other civilian was Arthur Bailey. He was the Red Cross field director in Greenland. He provided a wide variety of humanitarian support to all of the servicemen in Greenland. The 4 Army Air Corps crewmen on the flight, the pilots Herman Valdrini and Wayne Austin, the navigator Sam Turrentine, and the radioman Daniel Rowe, were part of the Air Transport Command. So they were responsible for ferrying returning personnel and aircraft from their forward deployed bases back to the U.S. And this flight was scheduled to be the last for all of them. They were to be decommissioned when they got back. The aircraft itself was a Boeing B-17 bomber that had its bomb racks and guns removed to serve as a transport plane. Now the inside of B-17, inside is not that big. So with 25 people on board, it was very cramped. It's not a pressurized plane. There's no heating or air conditioning, so it was pretty uncomfortable inside the plane. And there was bad weather on their last flight, so it's probably pretty turbulent. But I'm sure that undoubtedly none of that diminished the excitement that the 25 guys felt on their way home to come home to their families. The 25 guys were a true cross-section of America. My Uncle Al Warren was a city kid from Brooklyn. He was an honor student, an Eagle Scout, and a natural athlete. I'm named after him. I wear the ring that he used to wear that was found here at the site after the accident. And I'm also wearing, in fact, Sue Miller and I are both wearing our gold stars that Arthur and Al's parents received when they were, after they were killed. Arthur Miller was from Springfield, Illinois, and only 18 when he enlisted in the Coast Guard immediately after his graduation from high school. His niece Sue will say a few words with him. Am I right? I guess she is now. Put her on the spot, right? And she has no notes, right? Ernie Gillis was a Massachusetts native. The Gillis family had already suffered tragedy before Ernest's death here at the mountain. His older brother Frank was killed in a B-17 accident 2 years earlier. There's a park in Beverly, Massachusetts. Let me turn my page. There's a park in Beverly, Massachusetts named Gillis Park. It's named after the 2 brothers. Ernie left behind a pregnant wife and a child, and both those children are here today. Henry Labreck was another New Yorker. He was an Army captain, so he was the highest ranking member on the plane. And at 43, he was the oldest on the plane. He first enlisted in the Army in 1921 and served multiple tours, including one not so far from here at Fort Devens. He was commissioned as an officer in 1943. Lee Winard was a Midwestern kid from Michigan. He must have been quite outgoing because most of the pictures that Al and Ernie sent home from the war have Lee in it. Lee and Al trained together at the Coast Guard facility in Atlantic City and deployed to Greenland together. Greg Davenport was another New Englander from Rhode Island. His nickname was Rocky, and he was apparently a fun-loving guy because, again, he's in almost all the pictures that they sent home as well. Arnie Simons was from Rhode Island. My Uncle Al wrote on the back of a picture that he and Arnie were the leading double play combination of their snow baseball team in Greenland. Hugh Wirth was a firefighter in New Jersey before enlisting in the Coast Guard, and he was on scene at the famous Hindenburg disaster, and he helped pull burn victims from the wreckage. He left a wife and 2 kids. Stanley Warshaw was another New Yorker from Brooklyn. His sister told me that he was a good dancer, and they used to jitterbug together. Stanley's name is also honored on the Brooklyn War Memorial. Howard Carson's nickname was Shorty. Russell Scott's nickname was Scoop. And Russell left a wife and 2 children, and his wife was 5 months pregnant when the accident occurred. George Orford grew up in Long Island at the town of Hempstead. He left a wife and 2 children. George Fleming was from Pennsylvania. He was the oldest of 5 children. He was tall, had blonde hair and gray eyes, and ironically, he loved airplanes and had a collection of airplane models that he built. Dave Archlies was another Massachusetts boy from Dorchester. Bob, how do you pronounce Dorchester? He was from Dorchester.
Rochester.
He was the youngest of the 25 on the plane. He was 18 years, 5 months at the time of the accident. His parents gave him the consent to enlist when he was only 17. George Benfield was a farm boy from Texas. His nickname was Buddy. Rex Tansey grew up on a farm in Oregon. He had 3 older sisters, one who wrote a very touching poem entitled Our Dear Brother the day after she was notified of his death. Rex was musical and played guitar. Bart Bailey was a manager at an aircraft factory in Omaha, Nebraska that ironically manufactured Boeing bombers. He was active in theater in Omaha, and he managed a local playhouse. He resigned both jobs to join the Red Cross, and Greenland was his first field assignment. He left a wife and 2 kids. Eulogio Sanchez was born in Texas, but he grew up in Detroit, and his home was just a few blocks from Tiger Stadium. So my guess is he was an avid baseball fan. He enlisted in the Army on his 18th birthday. Dr. Pasquale Caviello practiced medicine at a hospital in Newark, New Jersey before joining the U.S. Public Health Service and deploying to Greenland. He left a wife and a child. The 2 pilots, Herman Joe Valdrini and Wayne Austin, had hundreds of flying hours between them, so good chance they would have planned to join an airline after their completing their military service. Wayne was a student chaplain at his high school in Fort Collins, Colorado, and he left behind a wife and a baby daughter. Sam Turrentine was class president at his high school in Greenland, South Carolina, class president in his sophomore, junior, and senior years. If things were different, he might be sitting among you guys. Daniel Rowe of Prescott, Arizona was called Danny by his crewmates, but his family called him Pat because he was born on St. Patrick's Day. His ID bracelet was found here when the memorial was being constructed, and it was returned to his sister. Frank Merriam and Wilfred Pete Johnson were both lieutenants in the Coast Guard, and the highest ranking Coast Guardsman in the group. Massachusetts was Frank's home state. He was from Melrose, just north of Boston. And Pete Johnson was a 1944 graduate of the Coast Guard Academy, and he's also enshrined in the Academy's Hall of Heroes on its Wall of Remembrance. God bless them all. Sue, you want me to put you on the spot and say a few words?
Thank you. My Uncle Arthur, of course, I never got to meet. He was my dad's older brother. Growing up, my uncle was a picture in my grandparents' home. because it was too painful to talk about him. And that was sad to me that I didn't really ever know my uncle. It wasn't until I became a military mom, thank you, Army, and sent my son off to war and spent time with the other families and the funerals and things like that, my uncle started to become more real to me. There's a big difference between seeing these pictures and actually being here. It's overwhelming. It's very touching. All of you that are here today, thank you. Thank you that you promised to maintain this. Thank you, Bob, and the original committee. Linda Abrams is nothing short of a miracle worker in how she tracked down my dad. Thank you, Linda. I don't know how you did it with all these families, but thank you. Thank you to the Stetner family for all that you do and you continue to do to keep the memory of our soldiers alive. And thank you, Al, for making it so easy for me to be here today. I appreciate it. All of the veterans, of course, my son's a veteran, so you're all my babies. You are all very dear to my heart. Jesus, thank you for continuing to take on this leadership role in what you're doing. Thank you to the community people, to the hikers who care enough to come up here, who volunteer. Thank you to my Patriot Guard riders. You're always there for our soldiers. Thank you. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate this emotional day. Thank you so much for being here. Hey, that's how you do it with no notes out.
I've been putting actually, I no longer have notes. It's all been washed off. Thank you, Sue. Speaking of Linda Abrams, she'll read the roll call. We family members, like Sue said, we family members have a special bond with Linda because her primary responsibility on the committee was, as Sue said, to pull off the miracle of locating the relatives of the 25 men, including finding my mother and bringing my family into the Mount Tom B-17 Memorial community. As Linda reads the names, Crystal Bartling, Ernest Gillis's great-granddaughter, and Toby Dowling, and family members will place a rose on the memorial. Before we start the roll call, I'd like to read the letter that the parents and the wives of the 25 men received from the President of the United States. In grateful memory of, name and rank, who died in the service of his country, 9 July 1946, Westover Field, Massachusetts. He stands in the unbroken line of patriots who have dared to die that freedom might live and grow and increase its blessings. Freedom lives, and through it he lives, in a way that humbles the undertakings of most men. Signed, Harry Truman, President of the United States. Linda?
Want to hold the mic? Sure. Here, I have an assistant. It is my pleasure to read the names of the crew that you've seen and those who were on the plane. I've been with the committee from the beginning, and it's a joy for us to have all of you here, whether you're related to the men or whether you've come because you honor all of us who have served in the military, who maybe are yet to serve, those that came home, and those whose lives ended right here. I have them by their branch of military, alphabetically. So first it's the U.S. Army, and the Army air crew that were flying the plane. First Lieutenant Wayne Austin, PFC Howard Carson, Captain Henry Labreck, Sergeant Daniel Rowe, PFC Eulogio Sanchez, PFC Rex Tansey, Flight Officer Samuel Turrentine, and Flight Officer Herman Valdrini. As you've heard, they picked up the passengers that were Coast Guard, who were also on this plane that had been converted to fly passengers. From the Coast Guard, Seaman Second Class David Archlies, Electrician's Mate Third Class George Benfield, Seaman First Class Gregory Davenport, Electronic Technician Mate Third Class George Fleming, Radio Man Third Class Ernest Gillis, Lieutenant Wilford Johnson, Lieutenant Frank Merriam, Seaman First Class Arthur Miller, Lieutenant Junior Grade George Orford, Boatswain's Mate Second Class Russell Scott, Radio Man Third Class Arnold Simons, Radio Man Third Class Alfred Worm, Seaman First Class Daniel Warshaw, Radio Man Second Class Lee Winard, and Chief Yeoman Hugh Wirth. From the Public Health Service, Lieutenant Dr. Pasquale Cubillo, who was attached to the Coast Guard, and from the American Red Cross, Mr. Arthur Bailey. And I also wish to add, even though I don't have the names, we have lost family members from the men who were here before. They were here 25 years ago or somewhere in between. Some have passed away who were here then. In particular, I need to recognize Dorothy Stetner. I knew I couldn't say that. It was very emotional finding Dorothy, because her friends thought my phone call was a scam call. And she said, wait a minute, she's talking about my brother. Who would know this? And then she and all the other families, we managed to find, all 25 families. We found someone in the family. Right, Joan? Yes, you did. Yeah. Thank you all for coming. We have not forgotten. Here they are. Read them.
I wasn't going to name any particular names of the committee members to thank, because what they do is for the purpose of doing it, not for thanks. But I see Brian and Violet over there. And some of you hiked up the mountain, and it might have been easy or hard. Brian and Violet hike up all the time with their equipment to maintain the site. So God bless the both of you. And I see, and there's another honorary Stetner here, Jim Morrissey. Jim, over here. Jim is the architect who had the vision to create this memorial. Go on the website and read Jim's statement and see what it all means. Not just the names on here, but the entire memorial site. So God bless you as well. My beautiful sister Ellen will do the benediction.
If you care to, please rise. From the book of Numbers, chapter 26, verse 24. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha May God bless you and keep you. Ya Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May the face of God always smile upon you. Isa Adonai panav elecha v'yosem lecha. Shalom. May God grant you the most precious of all gifts, the gift of peace. Peace in your homes, peace in your hearts, and please God very soon, peace in our world. Amen. Amen.
Present arm.
The sun. Oh my God, the sun.
Order arms. Flag face. Forward march.
Please be seated. Thank you to the Westover Civil Air Patrol Honor Guard. Did you all notice that for a moment while taps were being played, the sun came out? So to close out our ceremony, I'd like to introduce Rick Lee. Many of you know Rick. He's been a stalwart of the community for many, many years. As director of the Pioneer Valley Red Cross, he was the epitome of the Red Cross mission statement that says, quote, "We turn compassion into action." That phrase has certainly been true of Rick regarding this memorial. Rick was an original member of the Mount Tom B-17 committee. He's a current member of the Mount Tom B-17 committee, and he still remains very active in everything that goes on up here. I think, Norma, that Rick, probably somewhere on his body, he has tattooed the words, "We turn compassion into action." So Rick, the final word of the 75-25 anniversary is yours.
Thank you, Al. You know, Red Cross has supported the families of U.S. military literally since the Civil War. Clara Barton, you may have heard of her, a Massachusetts school teacher who was moved by the suffering of the war and stepped forward to volunteer. On the 23rd of June in 1945, Arthur Bailey was living in Lincoln, Nebraska, working as the personnel director at the Martin bomber plant, where the Enola Gay later was constructed. He resigned that job to become a Red Cross worker and leave his wife and 2 young daughters to serve in Greenland, to serve with the Red Cross as a field manager. He was, Greenland, by the way, if you wondered, why Greenland? It was a Danish colony which, when the Germans took over Denmark, it began looking for some other way to protect their shores and looked to the United States to be, if you will, a de facto protectorate of the U.S. The U.S. Army, Air Force, and the Coast Guard were charged with protecting cryolite mines there. Cryolite is an essential ingredient in aluminum necessary for the war effort. And lest you think that the Greenland assignment was an easy one, except for the cold, They were constantly repulsing German efforts to take pieces of that island and take over parts of it. So it was hardly a plum assignment or an easy assignment. Like other young men honored here today, Arthur Bailey was on his way home July 9th, 1946. He was to connect to a flight to Nebraska. He was 32 years old when he died here on this mountain. There is a story of service, sacrifice, and loss behind each of these 25 names. Their lives ended 75 years ago last night at 10:30 p.m. Most of the remainder of my speech has been washed away with osmosis. So we're almost through. It was important to those of us who were involved with building the memorial, though, that we were not just recognizing the men who died here and their families, though that certainly is the core of this, but also each of you and each of those men and women who have served our country since and are in service to it today. You've heard the expression, freedom isn't free, and the military service is inherently dangerous. These young men remind us of that, but we're also here to say thank you. We don't say it often enough in our country, but to say thank you to those who serve today. And I also need your help, because you may not have known this, but by stumbling up here, Mr. Mayor, or riding up, you became part of the history of this monument. I have an unenviable job right now. I would like to have all of you in our class picture for this year. Would you like to join me with that?
Yes. Sure.
It makes a great memorial, and it will go on our website. Each of you got a card, a memento of this event, as our thank you for coming. On the front, of course, is the front of the monument. The back is not only the people who put the monument here 25 years ago, but also the website, where a lot of the history of the monument and opportunities, if you're interested in helping us going forward, that's a great way to connect. Now, I don't want, as a former Red Cross person, I don't want to lose any of you on this assignment, okay? There's a ledge over there. I want you to get close to it. I don't want you to get too close to it. Bud Schuback, who is the wonderful professional photographer, now retired, who took the photographs on your card, is on the other berm over there. And it's our job to kind of move in that direction without pushing any of our loved ones or fellow members or community people over the edge. And I'd like to remind you one last thing. If you can't see Bud, Bud can't see you, right? We took a picture here in 2018, and I have to tell you, it's one of the most endearing photographs in the history of this monument. So we've got to have a shot of those of you who came today. Would you all help me with that? Okay. Moving slowly, including you, Norma. Slowly, safely, no emergency room calls today. Move that way and look for Bud.
Good with the knees, I like it. Okay, anybody else back there? Okay, everybody's looking over this way. I want you to make the person next to you smile. Okay, here we go, folks. Okay, just gonna take a couple more. Again, like as Rick said, if you can't see me, I can't see you. And we're gonna get one more. Thank you. Did you get it? Certainly.